Tutorial, we're going to take a look at how we can manage list, how pack works, how unpack works, and how this other object, pack with the K, also works. Basically, this is all about how to manipulate data, how to pack data together. So, just to start off, we've been looking at here we have like an integer. If I click here and pull down, here we have a float. If I lock the patch, you can see I can put like a float point number in here, which is basically just a fancy way of saying like a decimal number. Here we have an integer, which is just there's no decimal point to it. And then on top of that, we also have, if I use the message here, we have strings. And the string is just a fancy way of saying any text, basically. So if I type in Bob, this would read as like a string. So just a comment here, that's an integer. This is a float. And this is a string. And when we're working with one value, it's pretty simple. Not meaning to connect that. And we can pass, like if we look at, if I grab this object here, and I said random, I could give it a value here like 30, but we could also set it up so that I could grab this integer, I'll just copy paste this, and I could change it like that, change the value stored in that random object. But there are times though, then we have a list, which is just a series of this kind of data all together. So if I grab another message here, there might be something like where we could put like 45, 64, 34. And there are going to be objects that need you to give it that much information, that give it like a list of numbers. But what if we want to make a list from scratch? That's where an object called, type it in here, is pack, P-A-C-K, and it says create a list. And what we want to do for the argument is we want to say what types of data are we packing together and how many pieces of data are we packing together. So let's look at like how we would pack together 3 integer values. I would type 0, 0, 0. And when I hit enter, we see that we have 3 inlets. And if I hover over it, it says integer to be element 1 in list, causes output. Integer to be element 2 in list. And you can see that it's a blue inlet, so it means it's cold. It's not going to trigger something coming out of here. With this one, it says it causes it output. It is kind of orange, so that it is a hot inlet. And we can do this just by grabbing this, and if I hold Option and drag off, I can actually very quickly set it up like that. And I hook it up like this. And then I could do the print object, if I wanted to print it out. One thing I also do a lot, you'll probably see me do this in other tutorials, is if you grab a message here, this right inlet, set message without output. And this is also a nice way to debug stuff or look at values that are coming in. Basically anything I hook up into here, not this first one, this is triggering the message. It's more about like you send a bang, it'll cause the information to come out here. This one will just display whatever information is coming in. So I can like hook that up right here. And now if I lock the patch, if I change these values, you can see it's packed it together, 3900. And even if I had something else here for the moment, like it's going to default to these numbers that I put in here. And I can change these values. And nothing's happening. What's actually happening is because these are cold inlets, it's storing those values here. It's kind of like how this 57 overrides the 30 that was initially stored. Now we have the 38 sitting here in the second index, the 56 sitting here. And if I change this, now it's showing what the most recent values were. And like this is a little bit like of a coding concept that's important to keep in mind as we go further in our tutorial series. Why we would want to pack all this together. Again, also if I go to print, this image is going to get in the way here, but you can see that I'm also getting the values here. Now, there's another object that's quite similar to this, and there will be instances where we will want to use it, and it's a little bit confusing. It's pack, but with no C. And I wish there was a better name for it. It says output a list when any element changes. And if I hit enter, you can see now it has all these orange inlets. And I could just copy paste this. Copy paste that. And now, no matter what I change here, it causes the output. So those are basically your pack. That's how you make a list, how you compile information together. And it doesn't have to be an integer. I could also grab this, and I could do 0.0, or just 0 point. And I could also say s. And what this is doing is basically 0 equals int, 0 point equals float, and s equals string. Although in Max, strings are also called symbols. It's just a naming convention. It doesn't actually affect it. If you're used to other programming languages, it's just how Max refers to a string, although you might see it used interchangeably. And obviously, maybe not so obvious, if I change this, you can see it doesn't come up because the data doesn't match. The type of data it is doesn't match what it's expecting. It's expecting a string here. So I could delete this, get a message, call it Bob, lock the patch, click on it, and now we have all our values here. And you see this is still an integer, which would actually work. It's just showing us a 22 point. It's still just a whole number. So I could replace this with a float. And now you can see that it has the float value here. If I give a float to where it expects an integer, right here, it'll work, but it's just going to, you can see it says 0, it's still triggering the output, but once I type in 1, it's just going to round to the closest integer value here. So that's essentially how that works. Something you might also see is you might see I equals int. You might see F equals float, and then S again, or I could also just put in Bob. But if I go back here and just type in I and F, that also still works. Moving along, I'm just going to clean up some stuff here. I feel like you probably understand that. You can always go back in the video if it didn't. On the flip side of it, we have Unpack. So if I grab an object here and type in Unpack, it's also going to expect the same thing. I could say 0, 0, 0, 0. And if I have message, and so I'm using hotkeys now, if I just say like M, I can type in and a message box will appear. So I could type 43, 2, 66, and 123. There's 4 values in here. And if I set up I, that's the hotkey for integer, I'll close this for you. And I click on this, it's unpacking it into an individual list. And this is actually really important. If we do anything with serial data and Arduino, if we get weather data coming in, anything where there's like, you know, even like working with JSON or something, we can unpack that data. We might be like, oh, here's all these numbers that are packed together. I need just the one that's the pitch or the volume that I'm receiving something, or just the condensation in this weather data. I don't need to know how much rain per inches it's had over it. And I could even label these as like pitch, you know. So if I needed one value, that would work. And it's the same concept applies. You could do 0 point, you could do S, And now if I change this to 22.2 and Sue and Fred, and I could hit enter on this and click. And this is still an integer box. This isn't even going to change right here. So what I need to do is be able to visualize it using a message. And I can unpack that data like that. One last thing to keep in mind is you can also set values initially here. So if I go back, then there's not really much more to touch on with Unpack. You kind of just have to know how many values you're getting in, unpack it together. If I did have the pack object, and let's say I wanted to make sure that it always started with the value, I could say, like for example, if I had to give an argument, I could say rate and then 0.0 or 0 point. And actually this is a great instance of where I would want pack with a K, or POC as it's referred to. If I grab this float here, I'll grab another message. You're not seeing anything, but I don't want to change anything about rate. I want that rate to always stay there. And change that to here. And now we're always getting rate right here. And that sets it. Like I want that name to be there because that's the name of the argument that I'm going to give an object. So that's the tutorial on how to use Unpack, Pack, and POC. And hopefully that, even though we're not seeing examples of it, when we get into jitter, when we get into MSP, when we get into more complex objects, there's going to be more work we have to do around list and how to manage list.